Hi, my name is Kathy and I have a YouTube channel called My Sewing Practice. And if you haven't met me before, welcome. Okay, I have volunteered to bring to you some information about Project Dress-A-Girl. And I am going to break this video up into 3 chapters. The first chapter is going to be patterns for Project Dress-A-Girl. And then I'm going to show you some sewing techniques. And lastly, I'm going to give you a lot of good information. I am at the beginning of the tour, so I know you're hungry to know some facts, but it's always fun to talk about the dresses first. Okay, to start with, last year, before I was involved, there was a young lady from Thoughtfully Creative, and she designed a pattern for an A-line dress that was used. And it is still available for a free download. And I will link a lot of factual information below. To get to that information, usually there's 3 dots after the introduction underneath your screen, and click on that. But I'll also try to put some titles up, which is just verbiage across the screen. But as I record it, obviously I'm not doing that. So Alyssa from Thoughtfully Creative donated that pattern, and that pattern is an A-line dress, and it sews up, excuse me, into a dress that looks like this. And it only comes in one size, and that is like size 2 to 4. Now, this was a totally fun thing to sew up. And the mission says that if you want to contribute like a hair tie or some underpants, you can put those in the pocket. And also, if you would like to include, it's not required, but if you would like to include the size, you may do that also. And so that's how I affixed my extras. And then lastly, and I'll give you this information in the 3rd chapter, they would like you to include a tag. And these are available through their website and also through Mari Sews. And the next thing I want to tell you about this pattern is I'm going to offer a free giveaway also of a cutout version of that pattern. So in that pattern, I have included the front and the back, the bias that you need to go around the arms, and then 2 pockets. So I'm going to include this, and at the end, I'll give you how to do that. But basically, if you'll just write in the comments that you're interested in this dress, a giveaway, we will put those in a random drawing in 1 week. So in other words, on September 10th. And then that way you still have over 20 days to make your garment and mail it to Mari in October. Another pattern, and this one is going to be available on your website regarding this ministry, is a free pocket pattern, which I used quite a bit. And what I did is I sewed 2 layers and then sewed all around the edge and clipped it and flipped it. And then I liked to take mine and gather the top and draw them in a little bit. And that's how I did my pockets. One of the patterns I used on my own was something I had in my stash, and it's this pattern. Now, it is very, very similar to a dress that Mari gives information on how to make. The only difference is that on my dress, on the Burda dress that is, it's gathered up and then the neck causes the shoulder straps, whereas hers, the sleeves go into the shoulder straps. And At first I wasn't sure if I liked that dress for the girls, but then as I look on the website, I see a lot of the girls wearing this dress, and sometimes they have a t-shirt under it, and it looks really nice. So my version of that is, excuse me as I scooped it. So this is one of the pattern pieces, and it looks like this, and then this part gets gathered in. And then there's just a big rectangle to go around the bottom. And so mine looks like this. So there's a separate piece to cause the neck, and then here are my pockets again, and then here is my gathered ruffle. I put the size on it, and then in the pocket I've got some hair ties. And again, that is very optional. And this whole project is optional. Guys, if you are busy in life and you don't have time for this, you do you. And especially if you're a young mother, the best way you can contribute to the well-being of our planet is to raise wonderful people. And that is where you are at right now. And you can listen to this video and you can enjoy it, but you have my permission not to participate. Yeah, but if you have time and you have the resources, it's very much fun. And I'm going to go into how much fun it is in a second too. The next pattern I had available to me, and it is still available for purchase, is this simplicity pattern. And I started with the middle view here. And I got this fabric from a sheet that I purchased at Goodwill for $1. And it's this adorable mermaid fabric. And here's my flutter sleeve, my bodice, and my gathered skirt. Here are the pockets. And again, they're the oval pockets. This one has a tie, and then this one has the necks brought together like that. And while I'm in the neighborhood, I'm going to show you my other version of the same dress, only it's sleeveless. And this time I used bias tape around the edges. Okay, so that's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, is that I think this is a great opportunity to have fun with your sewing. So as you may know, when you create a bodice, a sleeveless bodice especially, you have 3 options. And going from least to greatest, you can do a bias tape around the neck. You can do a facing around the neck. In this case, there's a sleeve. And lastly, you can do a whole lining. And today in Jen's sewing room, Jen has a great video on the way that you can line a bodice in full. And I think you should just refer to that because there's no way I could do it better. But so that's one technique you could just consider, is how you're going to finish your bodice. Another fun thing to do is to play with your bias tape maker. Now, I have found that for obviously going around necks and sleeves, you're going to need your fabric to be on the bias so you can contour it. But if you're just going to put a drawstring in those other ones, you do not need to be on the bias. And I have figured that out, and it's easier to cut if you don't need to do that, even though the pattern does call for it to be on the bias. The other tools I want to show you are, I have found that if you're cutting out smaller radius curves, that the smaller cutter is easier than my big one for us who prefer a rotary cutter when we're cutting out our pattern. And lastly is your sewing machine itself. You probably have some stitches you haven't used a whole lot, or perhaps some feet, and that's where I had some fun. Now, I like to use a narrow hem, and I like to use my narrow hem foot. And even if you don't use the foot, you could practice your narrow hems like I did around the arm sleeve of this particular pattern. It wouldn't be my first choice for the hem, but for arms, I think it is nice, or even pockets. Now, if you have a narrow hem foot that you struggle with, perhaps this would be a good time for you to practice, because as we know, these types of cottons are very predictable in their outcomes. So in other words, it's easier to do it on this fabric than some of the other fabrics that perhaps you have tried. The next foot I have used is my edging foot. And my edging foot just has a flange going down the front, and then you move your needle to either side. And if you don't have an edging foot, perhaps your blind hem foot will achieve the same result. And again, I'll use that foot for doing things like top stitching. Oh, let's see if we can get the white balance right. I can't bring it in focus real easily, but it's very good for that. Or even when you're understitching, and I did understitch this collar. So your top stitching guide foot is another fun thing to use for these projects. The last foot I used was my gathering ruffle foot. Now this is a foot that I actually don't have in front of me, and I'll go get it. But what I wanted to say about it, it's a little bit unpredictable in its outcomes, because what it does is it brings up the fabric, and you don't really know, like if you had like 30 inches of fabric, is it going to change it into 25 or is it going to change it into 20? So this was a great project to play around with this. And how I applied the outcomes was I gathered the skirt and then put it to the bodice. So as you can see, this is a pretty evenly pleated skirt attached, and that is because I used my gathering foot. So just a second, let me go get it. So I'm talking about my gathering attachment. So this is what it looks like. It's a little overwhelming when you first see it, but this is where it attaches into the sewing machine. And then this goes on the, needle that goes up and down. And then here you have some settings. And 0 just means you're going to have a straight stitch. And then the other ones is like, this will mean that every stitch you're going to have a gather or a ruffle, a pleat. And this is every 6 and this is every 12. And I chose every 6. And so I would gather the fabric, and then I would leave my bodice open on just one side, and I would attach the skirt all around, and then sew up the entire side all together. And that's the same technique as I used on the Burda pattern. That is like a tie top, and then it has a skirt attached to the very bottom, more of a ruffle because it's a dropped waist. Let me show you. So see this? Same thing. I just left this side seam open, and then I did a long panel that was ruffled, and then I attached the whole thing. And I'll show you the inside. Now, another fun technique you could do that I didn't do is you could work on your seam finishes or your French seams, but I simply just used my serger. But as you can see, I just attached that, and then I closed it all together. And then this is what the ruffle looks like on the inside. And both for the ruffling foot and for the narrow hem foot, I suggest that you do your serging first. So in other words, if you were to use, like in this case, I used a narrow hem, and I did that before I ruffled it because it would just go in smoother. Okay. Okay, so I still have a couple I'm going to make. Again, it's early in the month, and so I have got some cut out in purple, and then I've already gotten my drawstrings made. And then I also have this pretty fabric. So that's what I'm gonna make before the end of the month. They gather them in October. So This is the portion of the video that I've discussed some pattern ideas and some technique ideas, and now I'll go on to the facts. Okay, now we're going to go to the website, and I'm going to give you some screenshots that you can get familiar with. Over on the far left is the Home tab if you would like to know more about the ministry. And then the next one over is where I found a lot of information regarding the dress itself. This is where I found the pocket idea, and it goes over the labels and just other things, including perhaps just doing a t-shirt dress. Next, we're going to talk about ambassadors, and if there's an ambassador closer to you than Maryland, which is where Mari lives, you might want to consider just mailing it directly to the ambassador. I suggest you reach out to her first, however. In the middle of the website bar tab is the store. Now the store has things such as the labels that you can buy, or you can buy them directly from Mari, but this would be an option to buy some labels. And again, if this project just seems a little bit too much, too overwhelming, you have the option of directly donating. And here is the address of the ministry itself. Now, like I said, the dresses will be posted over on Instagram. So if you're not familiar with Instagram, let me give you a quick run through. You click the plus button up there at the top of the screen, and Instagram is almost always done in the portrait mode on your phone. Now, in the middle, you're going to see a black bar, and then under there is Manage, and that's where you're going to get your photos. If they don't show up, just swipe down slightly, and then you can add the photos that you need. The next thing is, if you want to do an album and post more than one picture, tap on the circled little hamburger button I have there, and now you can choose which pictures. I suggest you just do one picture of each dress so Mari has less to count, because duplicates will not be counted. After that, you're going to have a filter page, which I usually ignore, and then next year your hashtag will go in, and it's Project Dress a Girl 2022. Now see where it says add tag in the lower left hand under the dress? That's where you want to put Mari Sews for Curves, and her name does pop up at the top. And after that, you just push post. Now, if you want to check it, go down to the lower right-hand corner where your little person icon is, and you can search around and see what you've done. So that's how you post to Instagram. And so that's it. We have covered some pattern ideas, some sewing ideas, and some information regarding getting your dress to the right person. I hope that helps. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to Mari or myself, and don't forget my giveaway, and I've got a lot of information in the description below. Happy sewing. Bye-bye.